Apyayantu mamangani vak pranashchakshushrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranam Astvanirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. These three stages, the question is, what do they culminate to, right? Shravanam, understanding while listening. Mananam, which is to remove doubts, go through the process of removing all of those confusions and reconciling the differences. And Nididhyasanam, which is to bring things together and connect things together. And it results in three stages. And what are they? They are Jijnasu. This is the one who is in the process of still knowing about the reality. So this is whereby it is what we call growing clarity. That means you're slowly starting to understand, right? Brahman is still an image in the mind. It is still, it's just such a orientation to keep it as an image that it's very hard to let go of that idea. And Jijnasu is slowly in the process, listening, coming to the retreats, listening, reading books, looking at different, videos. All of these things are, part of the sincere seeker. Now, there's one difference. There are two terms you may have heard of, which is mumukshu and jijnasu. And they're actually quite different. See, when you go into the world, you're just looking for objects in the world, generally how we are. And we start to see there is more to objects. There's got to be something more to all of this. And then the person starts to ask, questions and try different things in the marketplace, and the spiritual journey has begun. And basically, anyone who begins their spiritual journey, most of them are just mumukshus, because mumukshu means I've come to recognize that there is something in this world that I want to discover, and I haven't discovered it. But I don't know what is required to know it. I don't even know whether it is, should I do something or should I know something? So there's doing and knowing, there's a confusion. And what happens is most of it is going to be doing. So thus the whole person will go into this vast spiritual marketplace, and they will start to do all sorts of yogas and techniques and get initiated into so many different schools. And so most of the spiritual world is still, more or less mumukshus. They're the very active ones, who are traveling, who are, going to temples, going to different retreats, trying all different satsangs. It's all just one big movement of everything. It's like one soup of everything. And then as the person goes through that, depending on how much discernment you have, a few will switch out of this. They will see everything I've tried, I'm basically the same person. For the last 30 years, I've done so many things, this dance and that dance. I've done this and I've done Tantra and I've done this Buddhism and I've done this, so many things. And I've done, techniques. And you go, what I really am seeking is knowledge. And then the person starts to seek knowledge. And this knowledge is what a jijnasu is. So mumukshu is still doing it all, trying it all, just a lot of everything. And a mumukshu eventually, right, one of them, according to their discernment, they switch out of that mode and now they start to go into knowledge. And so a lot of mumukshus, but then already at the funnel, you have less jijnasus. And so it's very hard to tell, who's a mumukshu, who's a jijnasu. So you can see how much, right, this marketplace, how many options it has, and how much it takes to come to this knowledge. Jijnasu. Okay, so we'll call this growing clarity. Growing clarity. And Brahman equals image. Okay, Brahman's still an image. Okay, in the mind. Now, now one level before that is mumukshu. So I would use a different color. Mumukshu. And this one we can say everything. Everything in quotes spiritual, right? They don't know what it may mean, but they know this has to be more than just kind of, money and so on, and essential pleasure. Okay. Now, the jijnasu eventually, right, comes to a teacher because they have enough grace, they have enough, discernment. And what happens is they come to understand the knowledge. And when they come to understand, we said this is called akhanda akara vritti. That means we no longer have Brahman as an image. But you've removed that last trace of image from your mind. That means it's no longer image, but that which illumines all of your images, because of which all images are known and revealed. Okay? And this stage we call Brahma Vid. So Brahma Vid. So after Jijnasu, we have Brahma Vid. We'll do another color there. Brahma Vid. So, okay, yeah. Now, Brahma Vid, how did the Brahma Vid get there? Well, they, connected to the laws. They started to look at their inner responses. They, brought Ishvara into their life. They started to reflect, how is Ishvara connected to me? How I am dependent upon Ishvara's laws, Ishvara's presence, and how it is always expressing in my life, and how everything else is just an expression of Ishvara. So these questions all took place in the Jijnasu's mind. They were asking this on and on and on and on and on, and praying and following the right things to be done, and acknowledging one's helplessness, and recognizing there's something bigger, and asking questions. So they went through so much work, sitting home and then inquiring, right? Looking at how the universe, works for a moment, inquiring about all of the realities together. All of the things they've been hearing, they've been bringing them down into the world, into their own experience, and thinking, inquiring, and bringing the knowledge as much as possible into their life. And eventually, akhanda akara vritti, in other words, I have now understood. I am that already here. I am the truth. The truth is already right here. It is revealing the contents. It is showing the contents of my mind. My mind is shown in the presence of awareness. Thus, what happens here is that the mind, though, at this stage, still has some old orientations. And because we all grow up in a certain environment that may or may not be conducive, but you're still carrying all of that old stuff that is making you think like you're one small individual in this world, and the world out there is big. And you still carry this orientation even if you understood who you are. This is like, wow, I never knew this was possible. I thought when you know who you are, you're suddenly totally it's all finished. No, you have to look at it just down to earth. ordinary experience. The mind is there. The mind is talking. The mind is talking with its old stories, with its old narratives, and it just keeps on saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, this is not for me, right? And I can't do it, and this is too much, it's too little. It just keeps on speaking. Even though you understood relatively well, akandakara vritti, but still small individual. Still go to Swami, and go, oh, they kind of know so much, and you've totally forgot the idea that what the Swami knows is exactly what you know. It's the same understanding. So the person is still driven by their smallness, by their insecurity. And it's very confusing because you think that, moksha is supposed to be total instant freedom from all of this insecurity that we've been bearing for decades. The reality is not like this at all. Therefore, at this stage, the knowledge it's there, but devotion is not there. The feeling is not there. I don't feel, right, more cheerful. It's relieving, sure, it's much more relieving. There's more peace, there's a certain peace, definitely. But, it's kind of like, it's like not a big deal, and still the same person. Still responds the same to challenges as before, still judging, putting things into boxes. And like, what kind of a wise person is this? Well, they're a wise person, but beginner stage. That means even when they die, no more rebirth. No rebirth. And as you go through this process of refining your mind further, right, in the yoga shastra, right, doing what needs to be done, bringing the values into your life, continuing to listen, continuing to ask, continuing to just be in this satsanga, in this circle. Slowly, notions, those cucumbers start to fall away because you keep on nourishing your being, your mind, with the right nutrition. And thus all of those old stuff and every time they fall off, you're more cheerful, more devotional. Therefore, Brahma Vid. What should we say about Brahma Vid so far? Who is Brahma Vid?
Well, he discovered his own identity.
Discovered identity, yep. Discovered identity. What else can we say about Brahma Vid? Yes?
Brahman is no longer an image.
Is Brahman is known?
No longer an image.
Excellent. Not image, right? Brahman is not image. Anything else? Brahmavid.
Connecting to the laws of the universe.
Connected to the laws, right? Connected to laws. Connected to the laws. Anything else about Brahmavid? Any other features?
Bringing it into its life by praying.
Yeah. So continuing to pray, continuing to practice. I'll say this, continues to practice.
What happened to the orientations of the mind then? They far off?
In Brahmavid, orientations are still there. Yeah, so the orientations are still there. So I'm going to add one more. Orientations, like old orientations, still true. Okay? So look at this. Obviously, to go from mumukshu, right, when you're just in everything, it's all one. To go from mumukshu to jijinatsu, how much maturity has taken place? Tons of maturity. Because you have to kind of filter out all of the things that are not working. They are just kind of, playground for kids. And you come to jijinatsu. And then for how much maturity goes from jijinatsu to Brahmavid? Even more, because you're listening, mananam, nididhyasanam, shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. So there are quantum shifts. It's not like, oh, still this person who's, the kind of down walking, right? All of that. No, these are quantum shifts from this to that.
Your focus is directed to one point, huh? In the whole story. It's more that you know where to look, where to find.
No, I didn't catch that.
I say your focus from the stage 1 to 3 to Brahmavri is that you know that your focus is more directed to one finding.
Yeah, exactly. So less options, like more like directed focus.
But it has to. Does the attraction to one point? Does it? Are you guided in that?
Well, I mean, you've been guided since Mumukshu because you meet so many people. Everyone says something a little bit, you think about it, and you try it out. It doesn't work, and then you let that go. Pumpkins keep on falling away. Cucumbers.
You have an image of Brahman.
Yeah.
Like you said, someone has a Shiv image, someone has a Ganesha image. Is your focus is something directing you at the image, or is that?
No, we start out with images. The mind just starts out converting everything to an image because that's how the mind is. Okay? So that your journey actually begins Mumukshu. And then before Mumukshu, we can put something even earlier. What should we put here? Before Mumukshu. Maybe what? We'll put Artha Kama. Okay, so basically security, right? Security, take care of your kids, and a lot of work and business, and kind of getting stuff done in the world. Okay, so from there to Mumukshu to Jijnatsu, here you're not in this stage. You're not even asking. You're not even. Someone says to you, "Do you ever think about God?" Yeah, I think about God, but they don't actually think about God at all, because it's kind of a nice thing to say. You bring up the conversations here, you're not very listened to, hey, you need to just get your work done, you need to make money and so on. And then here already, this is where a lot of talk, everyone's got something to say. Everyone seems to have a teaching in Mumukshu. So, a lot of brochures get put up on the walls and you're like, wow, I want that. So it's a huge marketplace. And then Jijnatsu, already these are more, like satsanga, and you will find. Now, even Jijnatsu, there may not be full teachings, because Jijnatsu may want to listen to knowledge, and anyone who's sharing knowledge, they'll go to them, even if that knowledge is partial. In fact, usually, knowledge is mostly partial in this stage. So this is where you would teach about, pseudo-spiritual, like a partial Vedanta. We call it modern Vedanta, right? You take out Ishvara, number one, guaranteed. You take out the values, mostly. You take out the structure. You take out the models. And you only talk about Brahman, talk about awareness. So a lot of that stuff is Jijnatsu. And Jijnatsu just listens for years and not able to comprehend, not able to, quote, capture it. Why? Because you took out the intervening factor. You cannot reduce anything. You're trying to reduce form into consciousness, and you can't do it.
Brahmavidva is also criteria for an authentic Vedanta teacher.
Brahmavid, really? Okay.
For me.
Okay.
There are scholars who know everything about the scriptures, but they're not a Brahmavid. So.
Right, so Brahmavid is an authentic teacher, is that what you're saying?
That's a criteria.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So obviously, if you're Jijnatsu, then right, it may be just speaking, but there's no understanding. So it's comes across confusing, and people are like, something's off here. So yeah, so you can have different kind of Brahmavids, right? You can have a teacher who's at this level, and they will give you the structure, but they may still have a lot of stuff to work on themselves, and this comes across, right? So, but that teacher who's as Brahmavid, they're also subject to time, just like you. So as you evolve, they evolve, hopefully. Of course, one can even stop here. They can say, well, now of who I am, I don't need to work on myself. Now that is unfortunate because all of your personality traits will wash on to your students, and that is not fair. So ideally, the teacher continues going even further from Brahmavid. And this involves, just like for the student, work, acknowledging helplessness, continuing to devote prayer, right? Following the values. Being a student, when you're not a teacher, you're still a student. Again, you're working on yourself, your relative self, and you're working on your mind, putting healthy food, refining your responses, thinking, where did this come from? Where was this response coming from? Why am I concerned about this? Is it really my concern? How much work do I need to handle here, or can I back away? Why am I so invested in something being my way? Why can I not let it be its way? So still, all of these conversations are going on, hopefully, for the Brahmavid, okay? Which is why we say humility is so important. Because the moment you take, see, this is a stage tempting. It's very tempting here. I got it. I think you use the words enlightenment, sickness, right? And I guess, right, if I can, maybe you can put it here, right? Now I've got it, and I don't need to do any more work. But yeah, so ultimately you want to keep on, evolving, and this evolution is the next stage. Now, before I get there, there is one little factor, and that's called time lag. See, in psychology, when you go to a psychologist and they cure a particular phobia or something that you're carrying, and you go into the real world and you still feel some traces, right, of that fear, of that condition. Now, what's happening here is a time lag. When you cure something, when you dissolve something, then the mind is such that it carries trails. So it still continues in your future, and you may kind of mistaken that, oh, so it's still there, I need to keep on working on it more and more and more. But it's just a momentum of the past. So this means that if you work on yourself, you may think, well, I've been working on myself for 5 years, but there's not much progress. This is because the nature of the mind is such that it needs time to start to fructify all of this knowledge that you've been working on yourself, which is why patience is so important here. Patience. Therefore, even from Brahmavid, right, you're working and you're working and you're working, you're like, I know who I am, but I just don't feel cheerful. I don't feel, genuinely like transformed by it. I mean, I do, but not like, there are these other fellas who are just like happy. So this is because there's a time lag, right? Hopefully you continue working on, on your relative self. So as you keep on working on your relative self, then we have the next stage called Brahma Nishtha. Brahma Nishtha. Maybe you put one underneath. So Nistha. Nistha. And this is one whose vision is well established. That means you are deeply rooted in the knowledge. This is where the knowledge, amidst challenges, is at the forefront of your mind. So this means, right, when something happens, we tend to forget about the knowledge. It just leaves us. Brahmanishta is the one whose knowledge is so, like, it's as though in front. It's like right here. It's so close to you. It, quote, feels so close to you. It's almost like, maybe a metaphor, maybe it's a poor metaphor, like driving, right? You're just so confident to get into the car, and the knowledge is so there, you have no doubt about it. It is firm, you are fully driving. It's close to you. Brahmanishta is where you don't have an agenda, right? You don't have an agenda for doing what you're doing. You're just doing it because it has to be done. It's not like, let me do this for, my happiness. That may have happened in Brahmavid stage and Jñāsu stage. But here, you've already done so much work, it's like a cup that's already full. And therefore, no one can really add more fullness onto me because you're already operating from that inner satisfaction, inner contentment that's making you cheerful, a cheerful person, a person without any I want this for me. You're just doing it because it's got to be done, but you yourself are content. You are contentful of yourself. And if someone comes by, that's wonderful, but ultimately it doesn't throw you off. You're not thrown off by ups and downs. You may, of course, as a human being, get disturbed, but there's a cheerfulness, there's a certain, happiness about your nature. There's a certain upliftness about your nature. You're enthusiastic, you're, energized, you have devotion in your life. No longer philosophizing. Maybe in Brahmavid we philosophize, we don't know. I don't need to devote to this, it's all just one. All of this talk has been dropped. You're now just kind of more, gentler. It's like, it's just all Ishvara here. I can devote to whatever I want to. So more feeling starts to come in here. Now, when I say feeling, yes, it is, as a result of your cheerfulness. So it's kind of like a cheerful feeling, a warm, comfortable. You're comfortable with how things are.
I have a question about, you said that after, let's say the Brahmavid is like a beginner state. Not the beginner state, but after that, there will be no past life after Brahmavid. But how come then Brahmanishta is after that?
Yeah, exactly. Because naturally, right, when you understand the knowledge, as a human being, you've been doing, just to come here, how long have you been working on yourself? A long time. So it's become a habit. And that habit just continues throughout your life now. So naturally, through your habit of working on yourself and listening, naturally, right, Brahmanishta.
You say it's like we have these terms like self-realization and self-actualization. Could you say?
I've heard that. I cannot put that in this model because both of them are jnanis or jnani. Both of them are jnani or jivan mukta. Okay, I'm going to say jnani. Jnani just means, right, you've understood who you are. Okay, so here again, how did you get to Brahmanishta? Right, just sincerely working on yourself, and and you practiced over and over again. Just like this. Do you say, for example, I practiced ahimsa yesterday, I don't need to practice it again? I practiced it yesterday. Why practice it? You don't do that. Yesterday was yesterday, today is today. In that same way, Brahmavid doesn't say, I practiced all of this knowledge yesterday, now, akandakara vritti, I've understood, now I can just all let it go. A healthy human mind doesn't think like this. Okay? So these two stages are both, you understood who you are. Now the danger comes is when the jnani, the jijnatsu, the one who is growing clarity, right? When they convince themselves that they're Brahmavid. In other words, that Brahman is understood, and luckily, Ishvara always finds a way to bring one back. Somehow, something happens, some life circumstance, and then it just pushes the person back down to the ground, and then humility comes back all over again. So this is why we cannot now, start going, who's, Jijnatsu, Brahmavid, Brahmanishta. This is not a grading system for teachers or students. No, this is just an indicator where it's all going, where it could go. Okay. Now the other danger is when we say, oh, I can now rest. I'm a Brahmavid, I can rest. Again, back into that security mode. You don't know. You don't know if knowledge is really, really firm. Therefore, naturally, you would want to continue your journey until death, until last breath. And that is why that continuity naturally leads you to Brahmanishta. In fact, Brahmanishta is where your devotion is. Brahmavid is like, yeah, knowledge is knowledge, but, I don't need to now devote to all. These are just forms. These are just, why am I praying to atoms, water, to Ganga river? It's just atoms. Right? No, you're praying, it's one Ishvara. It's an expression. Your prayer is an expression of your love, of your dedication to something that has saved me from this ocean of forms, ocean of confusion. And I need some form to relate to show my gratitude. This is a natural expression of a healthy human mind.
So Brahmanishta equals a Jivanmukti who enjoys the fruits of liberation.
Yeah, good. So what you're saying is there's a Jivan Mukti who is now enjoying the fruits of having worked on themselves, right, on their relative self, on destroying those, those little bubbles that are still there. Yeah.
Just funny comment about Apache and Osho, who declared some of their students as enlightened. And that's
Right.
silly. How do you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So this is why, we need the scriptures, because something just as simple as this is a model. It lets you know, right, and you don't get fooled. And then the teacher says, no matter where you're at, your journey is really growth, evolution. There's no question of declaring, because life doesn't work like that. Life, tomorrow is different than today. And your prarabdha keeps on running and running and running. And you got many more events that you will yet encounter, that you haven't encountered yet. And when that comes, it will be a real test how firm you are in the knowledge. So, this declaring, I think it's irresponsible to do that.
Andre, suppose I have sons when sometimes I'm very deep in myself, very in the stillness. Sometimes I experience things which at some stage, my mind, it's making me afraid. So at some stage, the fearness just pulls me away.
Yeah.
What do I have to do? Because, I try to understand it afterwards. And I know I have to go back to that stillness, but how do I get afraid of the anxiety?
Sure. See, there's so many ways. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but the first thing is to notice. You're noticing it. You always have prayer available to you. I personally just always refer first to prayer. Ishvara, help me to release this. Second, we have japa, right? We can, sit down and just keep on returning the mind for a moment and let the mind gain some space to think about it. What does this mean? What's the cause? How else can I look at this? What else can I learn from this? What am I missing? Because just the fact that the thought is reoccurring, it lets you know that there is something to see about it. There's something to look about it. So maybe one can look at their thought as reoccurring as a indicator. What is to be learned from this?
I still want to ask about the cheerfulness of the Brahmanishta, because your prarabdha can dish you out anything at any time, also extreme things, unforeseen things, or the four results can come to you. Let's say the opposite would be the worst. So there can be and will be situations where you can't maintain a cheerfulness, but fear, stress, anxiety, anger may flood your system. Is it then also legitimate to, as Brahmanishta or even also Brahmavit, to, next to working on it and inquiring into that, also just having a certain peace in such moment where this is just Ishvara's, this body-mind has to react with fear, with
Yeah.
is Ishvara's working through me,
Yeah.
and I have some peace in the midst of it.
Yeah, sure.
Or is that like a self-delusion again?
I mean, I can kind of quantify that to give you some tangible idea. And that is, what is the duration of how long something happens unpleasant? And what's the duration of how long it lasts in my being? Does it last all day? Does it last 1 hour? Does it last next day? So the duration gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And what's the intensity? How loud is it in the body at that moment? If it's very loud, then that indicates there's more growth, because that means it's almost overpowering I. And also the frequency. How frequently does it appear? So if it's very frequent, then there's, obviously I haven't, thought about it, I haven't released it enough. And I haven't changed my attitude about it, where the mind spontaneously is able to look at it in a more, more harmonious way rather than so it's like this and it shouldn't be like that. So when the mind does that, that's where the work is. So intensity of an experience, unpleasant, the duration, and the frequency. So these three can potentially, right, tell you how evolved, how much you've been working on yourself. Again, I don't want to say which one you are with this. This is not about that, but definitely there's a certain cheerfulness and ease and peace about, your existence here on earth. Therefore, it's your choice. You can stay at Brahmavid, you can, stay, continue going, but the stakes are too high. So it's not, if you're dedicated, it's not really a choice, is it? It's just continuing to keep on going. So this is the ideal path. Okay. And again, why is repeated listening important? Well, suppose you have 5 wise people, and they're all jnanis, right? And someone is standing on the side who is yet to understand what a wise person is, what do they know, and there could be called a jijnasu, right? They're still understanding. And their idea is that I don't want to listen to this karma, to this reincarnation. I don't want to listen to, this is all, Indian stuff. I am a Christian. I don't believe in reincarnation. All of this nonsense which I've heard before so many times. And they discard certain teachings of the Vedas. Like there's no continuity, we've been born for the first time ever. Now, it seems very innocent, but look at the kind of error this can lead to. What we say in the Vedas is every person brings a different personality upon birth because there was a different person before. So you can have 5 people born, they will all have different personalities because they carry over different impressions. Therefore, when those 5 people all recognize the nature of the self, of who you are, then they will all still have those 5 personalities. Okay? It will be refined, of course, but they'll still have 5 personalities. And then this fella has an idea that a wise person, should, with a capital should, be like this, should be old, should have, be, like very popular, should be highly respected, should talk like that, should use a certain language. And they look at these 5 people, and only one of them happens to match that expectation. And they say, okay, I'm going to go towards this person. And this person happens to be a Brahmavid who stopped working on themselves a long time ago because they're sort of content. So that's exactly what you're going to get as your teacher. So this means when I stop listening and I exclude certain teachings, then you're denied reconciling certain differences, and you're denied, right, getting the right teacher, because one's got this impression a teacher should look like this, be like that. But you can have 5 wise people, totally different personalities, like no connection. This one's playful, this one's a little bit angry, this one's, loud, this one's, more devotional, and this one's more emotional. Different personalities. And they all Brahmavids or Brahmanishtas, equal. Therefore, by knowing that, the personality can be anything in these 5 categories, then the person can make a more informed choice. They're not going to exclude basically 99% of teachers out of their existence. Yeah, so you can see how many variables account for actually coming to the Guru. It's so many. And usually up there in Mumukshu or Jijnatsu, right, all show. There's a lot of show up there. But when you come and, there's more humility down here, then, I have no agenda. It was never about you. It was never about, people forget about you anyway. And to have all of that popularity, it's a burden. It's heavy. It's like carrying extra cucumbers, pulling down. A smart person doesn't want that. Because your contentment is so full. You can have 10 million people. It's just a burden, 10 million eyes looking at you. But if I feel emptiness in myself, and I still have that little much to fill up, what will I do? I would then, right, try to attract, because now all of these, babes, all of these young babes are looking at me, all of these young, seekers are looking at me, and it feels so good. So I keep on filling this by the presence of students. That means that person has more work to do on themselves. So it was never about fame, never about popularity, never about being someone. No one even remembers you. You remember Steve Jobs? How many lives did he change? iPhone, iPad, great influencer. He dies, world continues. Michael Jackson dies. So many lovers of Michael Jackson. The world continues like nothing ever happened. So this whole thing of being somebody, it's a total pratibhasika. Okay, next verse. A bright student who truly gets it is going to reply to the teacher. Verse 2.2. Okay. Na aham manye su veda iti, naha na veda iti veda cha. Yaha naha tad veda, naha na veda iti veda cha. Okay, someone read? Nice and clear.
I do not consider I know Brahman well, nor do I not know. I know and I do not know as well. Among us, whoever understands that statement, it's not that I do not know. I know and I do not know as well. Who knows that, Brahman?
What? Imagine someone speaks to you like this, What? What could this possibly mean? So, na aham manye suveda iti. So, the student says, I do not think the following. In other words, I do not think that this is true. He says first, I know it well. I do not think that I know it well. In other words, I'm not going to say that I know Brahman well. But I'm also not going to say that I do not know it. He who understands this, he understands it. And then finally he says, last line, in other words, he who knows it and he who does not know it, neither of them are true for the wise person. In other words, the wise person is not going to say, I know it, but the wise person is also going to say, I cannot say that I don't know it. A student who truly gets it. So in other words, this is very interesting because if you say, I know Brahman, I know Brahman. If you look at those words, so I is the subject. I, subject. Know is the verb. And Brahman is the object. So this means that I, right, is knowing about Brahman as a mental image in the mind. Okay? Therefore, for that reason, you cannot say, I know Brahman, like I know the weather, or I know, because then you're putting it as an object. But then he continues and he says, I also can't say that I don't know Brahman. Why not? Because you've just been given the whole teaching, right? So having heard all of this, I can't say that I'm not, because it was pretty clear that there is one common, right, presence about me that I just can't deny. And he thus who understands that expression, understands. In other words, Brahman is not away from you, it is the most immediate thing, and therefore I can't say that I don't know it. Because just to say I don't know it, that statement is known in the presence of I am, me, Brahman. Okay? So it's a very interesting way of looking at it because, we often have this kind of a black or white. You either know it or you don't know it. It's similar to Buddhist koans. One of the lines they say to you, and I want to see who's going to answer now for fun. If you tell me who you are, I will hit you. If you don't tell me who you are, I will hit you harder. Who are you? How would you respond to this? If you tell me who you are, I'll hit you. If you don't tell me who you are, I'll hit you even harder. Now, who are you? Well, you're not telling me. Get ready. Yeah, exactly. That's better. There's a way to answer this, actually. There's a way to respond to this. Okay, it's much closer. Yeah. So okay, look at the statement slowly. If you tell me who you, the emphasis is on you are, I will hit you. If you don't tell me who you are, I will hit you even harder. Who are you? Okay, what is it that you can hit? Can you hit awareness? You can only hit my body. So, in other words, and I'm sorry, one question, and what is it that you want to hit exactly? What exactly? My body? Do you want to hit my thoughts? Or do you want to hit me? Because if you hit my body, you're not hitting me. You see?
You cannot hit me.
In other words, you have to counter the question and say, by the way, what do you mean by you? Yeah. So this is Cohen. It just makes you think a little bit. Yeah. If you didn't get it, it doesn't matter. It's, it doesn't mean just because one didn't get it, oh, I'm not wise. So right. It's not meant to do that. It's just meant, to make you think a little bit.
So is Koan's Nididhyasana?
This, you could say, is Nididhyasanam. Yeah. It's part of thinking about it. So what I just did to you now was excellent, was Nididhyasanam. Yeah? And next verse, it will point out some possible mistakes of understanding Atma. So let's see what kind of mistakes can we fall for. Verse 2.4. Pratibodha viditam matam amrtatvam hi vindate. Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. I suppose we're all going to like a little bit of a trip on a Shravanam Mananam Nididhyasanam, and you go sideways, you go on a tangent, a little bubble. What kind of things can happen? Well, there are several mistakes, and the first one is you can expect Atma to suddenly show itself. So what happens is while the student is listening, right, they're waiting for Atma, this reality, to just, show itself. Let the teacher say something so suddenly Atma can show itself. So it's not here now. Go on. What else? Go. Yeah, what else? So you're waiting, right? You're waiting over there. So, right, in other words, the mistake is to wait for this reality to display itself. And it cannot display itself, it cannot show itself more than it's already known to you. It cannot be known more than it's already known. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. It cannot reveal. What's another word for reveal? Are you okay with reveal? Yeah, it cannot reveal, it cannot come out, it cannot reveal itself more than it's already revealed right now. Because awareness doesn't have intensity of showing itself. Like now it's really showing. See, that's a concept. And now it's not showing so much. In other words, you will never have awareness, be known to you more than it's already known to you right now. This means you can now go and read all of the books like Matrix and plug all of the books, all of the Upanishads in your brain right now that talk perfect words about what is Atma, and that knowledge won't reveal Atma any more than it's already known to you right now. Think about that. That means you can consume all knowledge in the world, go to every single philosopher, to the best courses, get all of the Swami's knowledge in the world downloaded into your brain, and that won't reveal Atma any more than Atma is known to you right now. It's a big thing. Think about that. And that's not only now, but if you had 1,000 years of downloads into your brain from all of the universe of knowledge, 1,000 years later, yourself, that you know yourself to be right now, won't be any more than it is right now. Won't be any more or less than you know it right now. As just common I am, I am, I am. Therefore, there is no question of waiting for it to be more than it already is right now. It's already at its maximum right now, but it doesn't have a maximum.
Is it like Arjuna asked Krishna, show me your, and then he shows it, and Arjuna said, no, don't show it.
Yeah, so this is a good point. So in Arjuna's case, chapter 11 and 10, Arjuna was asking Krishna, show me your form, your total form. And because he thought, wanted to see all forms. And Arjuna couldn't handle it because, it was a little bit too much. But what Arjuna did not understand is that he felt like he was a different observer to what he was seeing. So over there is a big world, and me, right, I am like a little person. So he says, I can't handle this anymore. Bring me back down to the world. In other words, there was still a separation between what I see and what is seen. The seer and the seen are two different things. But if Arjuna understood that what Krishna, the truth of Krishna, is the very I am, that is the truth of Arjuna, then there will be no question of show me more. Because show me more is always in reference to forms, which are nothing but manifestations of Ishvara. So if Arjuna understood that the truth, the final reality of Krishna and Arjuna is known as I am, I am, I am, then what is there to show? You're just going to see more forms, which is lovely, but ultimately you don't need to see more forms, because whatever you've seen, there is okay, it's a wonderful thing to see all that, but you're free of all of the forms.
So that means what you told is Brahman is unmanifested. With Ishvara is the manifested world, is all knowledge, all power.
Mm-hmm.
So as Brahman is the unmanifested, and in the at the same time, in the same it is manifested and unmanifested at the same time.
What, Brahman?
Yes.
No, not Brahman. Brahman is manifest and unmanifest is in reference to Brahman's potential. Brahman is neither manifest nor unmanifest. It is the existence from which manifest and unmanifest arises. So manifest and unmanifest always is in reference to potential, knowledge and power. Okay? Just like there is one awareness and I can say, wait for it. Think of an elephant. Imagine an elephant. You see, knowledge power got manifested as an elephant. Now think of a blue bird, a blue parrot. Blue parrot, gone. So the blue parrot is now here, the elephant is gone, but there is one common, right, substratum, I am, which never took place. It never manifested or unmanifested. It was there all along. So like that is true for the entire macrocosm. Just like it's true for you now, where you have knowledge power in the form of an elephant manifest and then unmanifest, but you remain, right? You, I am remains. It's exactly like that for the total. Therefore, summary, Brahman is neither manifest nor unmanifest, but because of which manifest is revealed, and because of which absence of manifest is also revealed. Okay, and the correction to this era of taking Atma to reveal itself is pratibodha viditam. What the verse says is that awareness is evident in every cognition. Every thought that you have, awareness is there, obtaining as the content of that thought. So the content of your thought is always going to be awareness. So this means that awareness has been true for eternal amount of time, and there comes a fella who's discovered some magical teaching that says, I'm going to show you awareness. And now this fella suddenly produces this, whatever it is, for 30 years and enjoys this thing for 30 years. And yet awareness has been lighting up minds for billions and trillions upon years. And this fella now magically produced something. And what is 30 years in a span of eternal amount of time anyway? Nothing. Okay? Therefore, you are, right, the light are available in every single thought. For this reason, there's no question of waiting for anything. Is this clear? No question of waiting for anything. Wait for what? Like, suppose you're waiting for something. What is that you're waiting for? It's a thought. It's just a thought. It's a pratibhasika. I need to pop that bubble. Anything that I'm waiting for is always an idea of that which I'm waiting for. And an idea is always a mind. Therefore, waiting, no question. Where is Atma? In my very attempt to wait. In my very desire to wait. I desire to wait for Atma. What's lighting up that desire? Atma. Okay, and the second mistake is that the world depends on your mind. So we call this subjective idealism, and it's possible to take Atma as the mind. So this means that there is no world without me, but this me is locked in with the mind. And there is a statement that says, hey, if the leaf or if the branch falls in the tree, if the branch falls from the tree and there is nobody to see it or nobody to hear it, did it really fall? You heard this? It's supposed to be a huge thing like, wow, I'm now taken back, I don't know what to answer. In other words, there's this idea that if there was nobody there, if the mind wasn't there, then it didn't take place. But it did take place empirically. Right now there are rocks and landslides and so many things are happening, and there is nobody there to see it, and yet it's happening right now. So it's happening empirically. The sound took place, but there was just no receiver to receive that sound. Visually, the whole phenomena of the tree did fall down, but there was just nobody there. So there's this idea that, hey, if me, the mind, am not there to see it, then it didn't really take place. But it did take place empirically. So this is a possible indicator where they're confusing of called subjective idealism. The world is in my mind. Another big notion in the spiritual world that I've heard before. The correction is that Atma is the presence in whom the branches fall. Atma is the presence in whom the body and minds are walking and thinking and desiring and loving and getting angry. And what is revealing all of those minds doing that? One I am, known to you as self-evident I. And that self-evident I is lighting up minds for millions and millions and billions of years. And then amritatvam hi vindate. One who knows this, in other words, that Atma is not something to be expected in the future, and that Atma is not the mind, one who knows this gains immortality. Meaning that the self-evident presence, which is evident to all of us, is you're connecting to that. So when I say there's a self-evident presence about you and you're connecting to that, that one gains immortality. In other words, when you shift your identity from your jiva atyasa, from the superimposition, and you understand there's a common underlying presence, through all of the changes and the pains and the struggles and the concerns and the joys and the millions of emotions that you undergo, when you understand there's a common underlying presence and it is crystal clear, because it is you, so it's the most obvious thing. When you're connected to that, when you are connected to that, I'll put that in quotes, connected, that is what we call moksha. Then you have gained immortality, because you've reclaimed awareness which is eternal. But before, my identity was in the body-mind, which was not amrtatvam, which was mortal. Therefore, I was mortal. So the moment we understand and we're connecting to the words of this common presence, that is called shifting identity. You have shifted your identity. If you're not connecting, and if you're going, maybe I should check this up, maybe I should go to another retreat, maybe I should hear this more, this is all fine, absolutely fine. Maybe I should compare the notes with what others have to say, maybe I should speak about this. And there's some doubt there, that means you're not connected to it. Not yet. In that case, still there's a binding to the body or the mind.
I'm puzzling about the connection. Who is connected with what?
Yeah, that's why I put it in quotes, connected. In other words, when you are relating to the common presence, you go, yeah, Andre, I'm connecting to your words. I'm relating to your words. It's what you're talking about makes sense. Okay, what you're talking about is something that has taken clarity, is clear for me. So in that sense, connecting, you're relating to the words. It's like me saying, the sky is blue, and you're like, yeah, I relate to you. I relate to you. So we're all on one page. But if I say to you, the sky is pink, huh? Right, huh? Right, you're just not connecting to that. There's some resistance. Atmana vindate viryam. So how to understand this vision? You understand it by your own self-effort. And again, we've seen in the Bhagavad Gita, how do you uplift yourself? By yourself. In other words, you can be your own enemy or your friend. How so? How are you your friend? Through relative self-growth. So this means we continue to use emotions as indicators, as neither positive nor negative, but just letting you know where you're at in your life. If you're suddenly triggered, there's something to look for, right? Something to look into. Contemplation, meditation, which is what we're doing in the Gita. Grace, what is grace? Is it just something that falls on your head? No. Grace is a response to your prayer. Grace is a response to your effort. When my effort is aligned with doing what needs to be done, then the result of that is called grace. When my effort is not doing what needs to be done, that means I am, cheating and, doing things that are just not right, then whatever comes back cannot be called grace. It's more like a little spank. Okay, so grace is something that you need to earn through your own effort. Okay, what else does growth involve? Understanding the fact of dvandva. This is a world of duality. If it's hot, it's not cold. If it's cold, it's not hot. If you're feeling sad, you cannot feel happy. If you're feeling happy, you cannot feel sad. If you're feeling clear, you cannot feel dull. If you're dull, you cannot be clear. So this is an experience of dvandva, of duality. And duality means I need to have the right responses toward every phenomena. There's no question of treating it all as one big, chunk of sameness. This is pseudo. So everything needs to be treated in the right manner. If it's cold, we put clothes on. If it's hot, then we, do something, put our shorts on. If we're angry, we don't say, I should be happy. Because dvandva means this experience is true. And when we're happy, we don't say, oh, I hope this stays with me. Because dvandva means for every one, there is an opposite. For every experience, there's an opposite. Therefore, maturity involves understanding that since this is a world of duality, I have to respond accordingly to whatever comes to me. This is also part of growth. And finally, understanding the nature of Atma, which involves that there is one presence through and through, lighting up Dvandva. Lighting up hot, lighting up the experience of cold, lighting up or revealing the presence of anger, presence of confusion, presence of tiredness, presence of energy. There's one light that in whose presence these experiences are coming, going, changing, fluctuating, modifying. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.